Okay, it's noon.
Okay, folks. Hello, my name is Dale Popovich. I'm here in my studio with my lovely wife and our new daughter, Poppy. She's wandering around the floor. She's a helper of picking up things and not giving them back. I will be doing this every Saturday at 12 noon until the self-quarantine is over. And I'm pretty much at home because I'm always quarantined to my studio. But the rest of you may not be. You can go to my website, dalepopovich.com, and it gives you a menu of supply list and library. You can I share my recommended brushes, paints, and supplies. So if you go there, you'll be able to find out what I'm using, and I will explain today what I'm using also, because I don't use everything all at one time.
And Yvonne Mucci said, "Hi, Dale."
Hello, Yvonne. Keep painting. I love your paintings. I also have an online art school called Towering Winds. I have to read this back well, at teachable.com. So I have other things going on there at all times. And what I want to talk to you about today is watercolor, of course. And this is my website here. And it gives you all the information as you scroll down. And that's a very good thing to take a look at. Every watercolorist always does things a little bit differently. So what you have to remember is that everybody has different things to offer. I also have part of my library here, most of my library, and I have Winslow Homer and I have John Singer Sargent's, among other types of watercolors over the years that have been painting. I also have 3 books here that I find very important. It's by a friend, Robert Corgi. This is Putting Your Painting in Perspective. And it's an excellent book. This really takes the fear out of perspective. It's nothing to be frightened of. And he also has a book on exploring the nature of watercolor. Excellent book. He's an award-winning watercolorist. And he is a member of IWS and TWSA. And he also has Drawing and Painting book. Very good book. 3 wonderful books to add to your library today or at any time.
And the links are on Dale's website.
And the links are on my website. So.
And also, Mariette says hello. She's watching from Seattle.
How you doing, Mariette? Long time no see. Hope everything's well and safe out there.
And Becky Kraft says hi and thank you.
Hello, Becky. And my wife is behind the camera. You're going to see maybe some bleeps and bloopers today, because otherwise Marilee is the editor of my website and does an excellent job. But let me walk you around my studio here just for a minute. I have various things. I have a lot of bookshelves to hold different things in here. I have bookshelves that are on different types of art books. I have bookshelves on Marilee's cookbooks, of course. That's how I'm well fed. We do collect antiques, as you can see. This is only a small portion. And over here on the table, I have demonstrations that I've done in class. And these are actually used as studies for final paintings that I may want to enter into a juried contest, or just as an example to show my in-studio students on what I've been doing and what they can do also. So these things here, I'm getting ready for different things. I'm going to be doing final paintings of a few of these, but I'm not going to be doing final paintings of all of them. But some of them came out pretty good. Some of them don't. I do throw things away, by the way. There's things, they don't always come out perfect, as most artists won't tell you. So why don't we get started? And this down here is Poppy. She's a new addition to the family. She's about 4.5 months old, and once in a while she gets feisty, but I don't deal with her when she's feisty. We get a timeout. Okay, why don't we start?
And don't forget to like Dale's Facebook page, please.
And you can ask as many questions as you want. I love questions. This is the photo I'm doing.
Up a little higher.
And you see my wife directing me. She used to be an art director, still is. And this was taken near our cottage. sometime in April a few years back. So you see the snow is kind of starting to delete itself. Right now we have about 2 feet of snow up there. So anyways, here we go.
And hi, Wendy. How you doing? How's Chesterton Art Center doing? And also hello to Marion. Nice to know you're watching. Hey, Deb. We got more snow up north yesterday. How you doing?
And this is a special call out to Denny and his wife Sue down in Florida. Denny just went through open heart surgery, so you need to heal good and stay well.
He and his wife run Dillman's, which is the Disney World of art workshops.
Okay.
Linda Heff says hi.
Hello. We're going to start off by painting large, big mass areas. We're always painting from background to foreground, large to small. I have adjusted the trees a little bit here and there from the photograph. I never paint the photograph, I paint the painting. And this is one thing that everybody needs to do, is to distance themselves from the photo reference and put a little bit of yourself into it, adjust things, leave things out that are not needed, which is very important. So I'm going to begin painting. I'm going to begin by lightly watering down the background paper here. You see this yellow here. I'm using liquid mascoid. My students will probably tell you, oh my God, he's using liquid mascoid. I very seldom use it. I thought for this particular occasion I would go ahead and use it. I'm not that particularly fond of it because there's a lot of adjusting as time goes on, but this is the liquid frisket that I'm using. And I put it on with a soapy old brush that's on the small side. I've seen people put it on with toothpicks. I've seen people put it on with a number of different things, but it's not something that is my go-to thing that I use all the time.
Why do you start your painting up on an easel?
So that you can see it actually. If I'm working wet on wet where I have a lot of water on the paper, I work flat. Since we're not doing a lot of adjustments on things, such as I usually have 3 cameras on when I'm working, so you can see me mixing here. We don't have that today, so we're just going with the things that we do have. So
what colors are you using?
I'm using sap green, ultramarine blue, and burnt sienna a little bit. And I'm being a little bit more careful down towards the bottom here where the snow begins to take form. I'm allowing some of the white of the paper to show through. And I'm going fairly light, and you'll see me use a number of different things. I don't worry about drips too much. They'll disappear with time.
What kind of paper are you using?
That's a good question. I'm using a paper that a student gave me. I've used it many times before. It's Arches cold press. It doesn't have a lot of texture on it. My go-to paper lately has been the Indigo 300-pound rough. And I'm not using that this time. I thought I'd use something a little bit smoother. And also the mascoid, which is important to this particular subject matter, goes on better on a smoother surface rather than an extremely rough surface. And the brushes I'm using are cat tongue brushes. You can get 3 of these, large, medium, and small. They're great. They're made by Meaden through Amazon on my website.
Yeah, just go to his supply list page and we've got a direct link there.
And I'm also using raw sienna today. And I'm taking and tapping off the brush on the paper towel to get this dry brush look to this. I'm going to be leaving some of the white of the paper in this case. There's always different thoughts on this. The purists believe that there should always be white of the paper showing, from my understanding. And you have other people say, well, I do and I don't. And I'm saying do whatever works for the painting. If you need to leave it white, leave it white. It's all up to how you're handling and the watercolor and how you want it to be visually represented. And I'm putting in these grasses that have died down the previous fall here. I'm also going to take some cobalt blue, which in this case on this palette is my cooler blue, and I'm putting it down here at the bottom just a little bit with the toothbrush.
Whose toothbrush is it?
That's my wife's toothbrush. She travels with this. I clean it after I use it. It's a joke between us. Anyways, I'm watching how the watercolor is drying. The thing that one cannot learn without doing is how to anticipate how it dries, because watercolor dries really lighter. And you have to kind of learn that anticipation curve, which again cannot be taught. And it's the same thing we teach opaque watercolor down at the palette in the foundations course of drawing and painting. I co-teach it with Robert Krajewski.
And where is it?
And that's down in Chicago on 1012 North Dearborn. And it's a wonderful place. It's a very old establishment. It's had a lot of noted painters there over the years. And you can see that what I'm doing here is moving around the painting. I never stay in one place too long. And I'm going to take a little bit of cobalt here and mix it with a little bit of what was over here pre-mixed with the greens and the browns and stuff. And I'm going to run a cast shadow across the foreground to close the eye into this particular area. This is going to be my focal point naturally. And I am trying to omit all that light that is in the foreground here. And this is an overcast day, so shadows are not really showing up a whole lot in this particular photo. And I'm adding other colors into this here and there. When I go back over the background, I'm not going to cover the whole or everything up there. I am going to allow some of these wonderful colors to show through, which will give me the depth that I'm looking for. But right now I'm looking for the texture in the foreground, just trying to do this very quickly. And then with the toothbrush, I can take a lot of paint or a little bit of paint, and if I take this far back from the paper, it will shoot out wider, kind of like a shotgun. But if I bring it in closer, I can get little things by just slowly and smallly flicking the brush that's in there. Then after I've done that, I can take the smaller brush here and manipulate what I've put down. And this gives you a random pattern that humans really have to work hard at, because we like everything balanced and neat and nice. And I want to get these bottom of these trees connected to the pattern of the grasses coming through the snow. And while this is still wet down here, you could spray things wet in the dry or wet in the wet, and it will diffuse nicely. Do we have any other questions out there?
Let's see.
I have a little bit of lapse time left.
Oh, Debbie, I'm sorry I missed this, Deb. She want to know if you're working on 140 or 300.
I'm working on 300 pound.
Arches cold press.
Arches cold press. Not arches rough, but arches cold press. I always believe that the paper sometimes will determine your subject matter. If you're doing something that's architecturally, that has to be correct, usually do it on a cold press or a hot press. Hot press is very smooth and slick, where cold press has a little bit of texture and rough has a lot of texture. The cold or the rough indigo paper I use has an extreme amount of texture to it, which gives a different type of embellishment with the watercolor. So I'm always looking at how I want the subject matter to reveal itself on the paper. So the paper does do a lot. I'm always telling, especially beginner students, you really need good brushes and good paint and good paper. In other words, you don't go out as a professional golfer with a dollar ball and a stick.
Dollar store.
At the dollar store. I always tell people, do not go to the Hobby Lobbies and stuff to buy your art materials. For one thing, they're overpriced, and they don't have an array of good material. I'm feeling the back of the paper with my hand at this point to make sure it's drying, which it is.
Like a shout out to Judy and to Kathleen for watching.
Judy, who?
Okay, let me scroll back. Schneider.
Hello.
Arvidsson.
Arvidsson, yes.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey, Freddie. Freddie's watching too.
Freddie's one of my studio students. I started teaching her in fundamentals over 30 years ago when I was at the American Academy of Art. And she is now one of my current students. We haven't seen each other in a while because work takes over, and now we have the virus. But
all right,
we'll get through this.
Just so you know, it was Kathleen Ward. Kathleen
Yes.
M. Ward's watching. Freddie has a question, which is, can you tell us what you like about those particular brushes? They seem to be a blend of round and flat.
What I do like about the brushes is that, like as I said, you get 3 in a set. While this is drying, I'll explain it. But you can work, on the edge with this to get a fairly fine line, especially the small one. They're great. The big one is great for washes and so forth. But they are real hair. Most likely they are squirrel. And I haven't seen a set of brushes like this cheap and they're that good. My wife got these for me for my birthday last year as kind of a surprise because she never knows what to buy me. It's the same way that I got introduced to indigo paper. She was surfing the net on the way home from Wisconsin at Thanksgiving one year. She asked me, have you ever used indigo paper before? And I said, no. Well, you will be when you get home because tomorrow there'll be a shipment on the front door. I fell in love with the paper. It's a wonderful paper. It has a handmade feeling. It's a very soft paper, so you can't handle it rough like you can on the arches. But I learned that the first time demonstrating my studio. I went through the paper with my lifting brush I use, which is an old oil brush. When the laughter stopped down, I charged them twice the amount for that evening class.
Lisa from the North Woods is on now, too.
Lisa, how are you doing? I hope everything is well up there.
And Jan Cederlund said she's one of Krajecki's students.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I was one of Krajecki's students, too, back when he was in his 30s. So
Yeah.
also, and Lisa said hello to you and me. Mary Kay Warts, I'm sorry if I pronounced names wrong, I'm really bad. Cunningham, she said, I know Judy Avidson and belong to the same watercolor guild. And she wanted to tell Judy hello.
You just did.
Yeah. And Deborah Page Jackson is here, and she said she's a past PNC student.
Yes, I know the name.
Also, Barbara Berry.
Barbara, okay.
She said that she signed up for your April workshop. Is that in Main Street, Barbara? And Judy said hello. Hi, Mary, and thank you, Dale. And Lisa wants to let you know she's doing well.
Good. Stay healthy up there. We are moving the workshop at Main Street. I'll have answers for you after today. We canceled it due to the shutdown, the lockdown, which is understandable. These are things that we can't control, but it will be moved to a later date. I also have a workshop down in Nashville, Indiana, in the middle of May, and I haven't heard word on that yet, so we'll keep you posted. I also have a 4-day workshop up in the North Woods at Lac du Flambeau at Dillman's from late September to I think October 1st or 2nd, but you can check that out on Dillman's website. wonderful place to experience the North Woods, and especially at the beginning of fall. Okay, we're ready to go.
And Mary said that our Lakes Region Watercolor Guild and Up and Coming workshop was also canceled.
Yes.
In Grays Lake.
So there's been a number of cancellations, and I'm just trying to go with the flow. There's really nothing that we can do about it. We'll adjust to it. This is something that one thought we would never see in our lifetime or even think of seeing, but we are. Okay, so I'm going to start with some darker darks now, and I'm going to get into the background again. It's always background to foreground, and that's a continuous painting process till the background is set, and then you work forward. So detail is always last and least important at this point.
Deborah Page Jackson said, yes, thank you so much for this well-needed
diversion.
Yes, exactly. And she said, I've been at my easel every day this week. Hey, the one great thing about artists that we are by ourselves a lot of the time anyway, so we probably can handle this better than the average person. And this is like a gift where you're just basically nailed into your studio. I mean, how many times have we asked for this? And now we can order from Dick Blick's or Amazon, and
or Cheap Joe's, where we get all of our supplies.
Or you could, and you can just work on your what you've wanted to work on for a long time. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied.
So as I'm going through this watercolor here, you start slowing your process down in the second one. The very beginning of a watercolor is very quick in the blocking. You're establishing masses of lights and darks, and you're trying to understand the relationship of those lights and darks. But you want to slow that process down as you move into the painting, and every brush stroke you need to understand to be a little bit more decisive about what you're doing, how you're doing it, where it's going to be, how it's going to look.
Phyllis Kingsland.
Phyllis, how are you, dear?
Phyllis said, made it. I'm missing seeing your brushes, with a couple little goofy smiley faces.
Yes.
Gary Price is watching.
Hello, Gary.
And Yvonne Mucci said she loves those darks.
Yep, thank you. Phyllis is one of my palette and chisel students that's been with me all the way from fundamentals, and she's becoming a wonderful painter, and I can hear her laughing now going, oh sure. So what I'm doing here is I'm softening a few edges, and I'm darkening up a few things. I'm going to take a little bit of burnt sienna while I've got it here to help balance off a little bit of the cool color with some warm. As you can see here how warm it is. What always amazes me, and I've watched a number of watercolorists over the years from my instructor, Irving Shapiro, and forward on that, and I'm always amazed in how differently we work as we grow and move in different directions over the years. I've been in contact with several of my students over the years, and I always find it interesting on what they've achieved, and they've achieved a lot of wonderful things. I'm putting strokes into the background to help build those woods up a little bit, and it'll be more soft. But they have achieved wonderful things over the years and established themselves as fine artists or commercial artists, illustrators, graphic designers, and they have blossomed into a lot of wonderful artists, which is a nice thing to see, that a lot of them stayed in the field, which it's not an easy field to stay in. Especially nowadays. So I've been taking different combinations of the green, sap green I'm using, the ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and I'm trying to make the background semi-busy without, because this is going to meld together and dry quite differently as we move through it.
Mary wanted to know, like burnt sienna?
Burnt sienna is a grayed down red-orange, if you want to label it something.
And she also wanted to know, are you using reds in the greens? I read backwards. It should be that, and she's wanting to know if the red is burnt sienna.
The red is burnt sienna, yes. I've limited my palette to 6 colors. So we're using the ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, the sap green, the burnt sienna, and the raw sienna. I'm going to be using a little bit of the what some people might want to use, alizarin crimson. I've been using brown madder lately because alizarin crimson is a fugitive color. I just sprinkled some alizarin crimson in there. And that means that it fades quite rapidly. And what I'm doing is I'm experimenting with different things, and I found that brown madder fits the bill for what I want to do with it. Now, every artist, as you'll see, or as you experience, you'll find every artist has their colors that they like to use. They have their color combinations. They have their favorite name brands. They have all sorts of different feelings about color, and I never try to tell anybody that they're wrong or they're right, because it's a personal thing. And
now you said the alizarin crimson fades. Does it fade in the sunlight, or is it
fades in sunlight or in shadow? It's a fugitive color.
Tom Cabela is watching. Hi, Tom.
Hello. And I want to get some of these other things darker and nondescript as we go off to the right-hand side of the painting.
Mary Long is watching. Hey, Mary.
How you doing, Mary?
Suzanne's here.
Hi, Suzanne.
And Freddie wants to know, what brand of brown madder do you like the best?
I've been using what I have now. I have Prismacolor by Prismacolor. It actually is an excellent color.
Does Core Paints make a brown madder?
Core Paints does not make a brown madder as this is. I'm using some of my old mainstays here, to be truthful. I've been lately, in the last year, I've been experiencing Core Paint. That's Qor by Golden Paints. Golden Paints are I believe, are the inventors of acrylic paint, and they came out with this 5 or 6 years ago, and I was quite enthralled with it. My wife happened to win a small set of Core Paint, and I became quite enthralled with it, as I said, and it's really wonderful. The light fastness is great on it.
I won it from the Watercolor Society of Indiana. We went to their meeting, which was supposed to be today or tomorrow, but is canceled. And, Mary Long wants to know, is the alizarin crimson fugitive in all forms, oil paints too?
If it says alizarin crimson permanent, it's most likely permanent. Mary, you know Bob Krajewski very well as I do. The man is an walking encyclopedia of information. What I'm doing here is I'm tapping off a pattern. He would know best. He's very much like my father-in-law, where he investigates and is very logical in his approach to things, very technical sometimes. And he would actually know whether in oil paints it is or it isn't. I don't know what they offer in oil paints, to be truthful. I haven't painted in oils in years, but Bob does occasionally paint in oil, so you may want to direct that question to him on his website.
And that's robertkrajewski.com. Or, Mary, if you want, private message Dale, and we'll get you his email.
Mary, I have a question for you. Are you allowed to go out and paint in plein air?
She has to be 6 feet away from the next person.
Well, put up a sign. I'm painting, leave me alone. Okay. Now, I have taken a paper towel and I occasionally do pull out to manipulate certain things in the watercolor. There's a number of different techniques, but you can see from what I put down here, when it dries, it's going to go a lot lighter. That is always the case with watercolor. It never fails. So watching the watercolor dry, I tell my students to literally sit on their hands and don't play with it. I'm playing with it now, but I know what I'm kind of doing here. So I'm adding a little bit of cobalt blue down in here. And it's grayed down a little bit because, like I said, it's kind of a gray day. And then I'll adjust that a little bit, soften it. I always try to keep my edges as soft as I can for as long as I can, without trying to define too much. And again, different subject matters will dictate different things. So I'm going to increase the color down in here, but I'm going to spray this a little bit so it softens up. And I am putting again cast shadows because it adds interest, and not that they're really not showing there, but I know about how the picture was taken.
All right, Lori wants to know if we can zoom in closer. And Lori, I'm sad to say, because this is Facebook Live, they won't let you zoom in. And I don't know what to tell you. This is something new for us, so we're going to work on it more when we do the next one. Hopefully we'll be in much better shape. Oh, Mary also wrote, well, the plein air painters Chicago will be going out to paint, but keeping 6 feet apart. First paint out is April 4th at Montrose Harbor.
There you go. For those plein air painters, get out there and paint with this group. It's a wonderful group. If you have any questions, you can recommend them to Mary Long. That's Longe. She's a wonderful person. What I'm doing here is I'm breaking up the background with trees I know that will fall back. They will never be as light as the ones that I put mascoid on. And this will help fill the background up a little bit. And I'm also being very careful not to put trees in looking like the farmer planted them in perfect rows and they have perfect separations. I am trying to keep them different distances.
I'm going to try, we got maybe an inch more to scoot in. So, okay, now I'm up. Don't bump the tripod with your hip.
Okay. And at this point, I can continue to work fairly well without it running all over the place. I'm adding some darker darks over here at this area. I take my toothbrush just with water on it occasionally to soften things. But this painting, I've never done this scene before. I've had this photograph for about 2 or 3 years. And I thought, why not try something new while we're working with all of you, or working for you right now. But things can get overworked, so you have to be careful. When I'm painting in a studio by myself without a camera on me, I'm walking back and forth at this stage, looking at what I need to do, what I don't need to do, don't touch this, don't touch that. I do talk to myself down here.
All the time. Judy, I'm going to be so bad with her name. Judy, I need help. She's watching. I'm sorry, Judy. If you knew me, you know that I'm not the best. The dyslexia gets to me. Barbara Berry said zooming in worked.
And good.
Phyllis Kingsland just had mine aha moment. Thanks, Dale. You are, you are a wonderful painter. Paula says, love your style. Will you have this video available to watch after you're done? I logged in just now. Yes, we are going to make sure it's published. Also, I'm going to work on Dale's blog post when this is done. And we will have the video there, and he's going to walk you through. It'll have the colors and the paper and any answers to any questions you guys might have. So that'll be at dalepopovich.com, and look for it's 2020 Field Journal is his blog post. And I'm going to try really hard to get it done and up tomorrow. Don't forget to like his Facebook page when you're at his website. We send out a newsletter every once in a while. We try not to bombard your email, sometimes more than others, but we try real hard. Jan said, in case we all cut off at the end, thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. Jan, are you from Main Street? Yes?
Cedar Lunged.
Okay. I'm establishing a little bit more in the foreground now, so that gives me time for this to dry, and I don't have to work in one place. I'm working around the painting. Sometimes I do put down things too dark, but that's okay.
And you're not using toilet paper, are you?
Nope, not toilet paper. Paper towels. Couldn't get toilet paper this week. But this is always interesting to try something different, try something new. You're starting to see this evolve with the background, that there is a feeling of woods back there. Without painting every tree, without painting everything, I'm trying to understand the general masses of things.
Just so you know, Jan said, I believe she said this before, she's in Bob's Caneville studio group.
Okay. Yeah.
And then Mary Ellen said, beautiful variation of color in the darks.
Now I'm taking my fingernail here, and I'm putting in other trees that will go up into the pine trees into the background. And this adds only another depth. Actually, one time I did buy false fingernails at a beauty shop that my wife and I were at because she was looking for some makeup. And the lady looked at me, and my wife was standing behind me. She says, I don't know him, he's not mine. So I bought them anyways. They worked as well as my fingernails, but I thought, since I don't always have fingernails.
All right, Paula Havisto, Havisto,
Yes.
wrote and said, we all have failed watercolor paintings, so it is desperation to use toilet paper. Ha ha. And
I use paper towels and everything, so don't feel bad.
Mary Long wants to know, besides teaching at the Palette and Chisel in Chicago, where else do you teach, and where are you going to have workshops this year?
I teach at the Elmhurst Art Museum on Tuesdays from 9:30 to 12:30. I teach at the Palette and Chisel on Thursday morning and afternoons from 10:30 to 4. Watercolor classes in the afternoon. Fundamentals is in the morning. And I teach at Main Street Art Gallery in Lake Zurich. And then my workshops have been slowly deleting, which I understand, and my workshop at Main Street was canceled, but I will have another one later on this year, which I will post when I know what's going on.
And we were supposed to be at the McCord Gallery, in what town is it in?
That's in Palos Park.
They were supposed to have their open house on the 28th, but that also was canceled. Dale was going to be giving a free demo. In addition, he's going to have a one-man show there from the end of June all the way to the end of July. And then he's going to be doing a workshop in October there. But that's all going to be posted on his website.
It's all up to change, subject change and so forth. So we're trying to deal with the changes, and we will update you on those. So right now I'm going to go into the background here with some darker darks up in here. This is fairly dry and they won't bleed out too quickly, too fast. Dry my brush off a little bit. So I'm adding several dark patterns up in here. And this is going to act as part of the background. It's nothing that is going to be a focal point by any means, but it's kind of like a character actor in a movie. It's going to stand back from what's going on in the foreground.
Suzanne says that she's sorry she missed the start, but Suzanne, this is going to be, I'm going to publish it so you can watch it as many times as you like, and you'll probably be able to zoom in on it then from your Facebook page. She said she loves it, and she wants to know what you think of masking fluid.
I'm not a big fan of it, but I did use it today. You see the masking fluid still showing. I used an old brush, soaped it up so that the mascoid doesn't dry inside the bristles, and I masked out these areas, and what it does is it resists the watercolor. I probably didn't cover everything, and I didn't want it all covered, because this will allow some of the character of the line to show up. And there's going to be softening going on.
Mary asked a really good question. What do you mean when you say, oh, you just flipped up. What do you mean when you say putting in dark patterns?
I'm putting in dark patterns so that they recede, they go to the background, the darkest darks at this time I'm putting in. So the darks recede and your lights will come forward. I'm seeing a number of different patterns going on through here. I'm trying to connect some of them, but not all of them. I want them to hang together to a certain degree. And over here, like I say, on the right side, I'm using quite a few more darks because we read a painting from left to right, and the idea is to keep them in the painting. The reason why you stay in the painting by putting darks over here and a little bit in the foreground, in this particular case, is that we read, our eye is attracted to contrast of value first. And that's the lightest lights and the darkest darks, which I'm applying at this point around the main birch tree at this point. But our eyes see color because of light. If there was no light, we would see no color.
Okay, Deb. Deb from Lakeland Art League, which you have done many workshops for those great people. Yes. She said, I'm sure that we're going to invite you back to do a workshop.
Wonderful. I always enjoy that Lakeland Art Group. Good people.
They're these ladies, if the North Woods, right now they still have 2 feet of snow from what our sister-in-law told us yesterday. And these ladies come out when it's blizzarding.
17 below.
And they will travel 40 miles in icy conditions just so they can do their paintings. I don't know if it's politically correct anymore, but these are some gutsy women.
Yep, they're really nice people. I've never had a bad student at any of my workshops. Couple in college with...
Mary, Lakeland Art League is in Minocqua, Wisconsin. That's up by our cabin.
South of Rylander, Wisconsin.
So you're talking about a 6.5-hour drive from Chicagoland area. At least we are from Indiana.
Any minute now I'm going to be taking off the mascoid, but I have to make sure it's dried. And that you cannot do too quickly. There are mascoid removers. They're like rubber soles. But
the cement rubber remover.
Yeah, rubber cement remover. And I don't have that because, like I said, I don't use mascoid that often. But you can see on how this is revolving. I will have some lifting to do and some softening of those edges yet, So I am going to show you something a little bit different at this point that I did just this last week.
Lisa said, we just love to paint and love to have Dale teaching them. And
I'm going to show you something right here that I did as a demonstration to a group, in a very small group, up in Main Street in Lake Zurich. I did the same scene with 3 different color patterns each. The first one was done with sap green, ultramarine blue, and raw sienna. It's a scene that's up close to our cabin up there, not too far. And these were maybe 15 minutes apiece at the most. I wanted to show the one student I had that was watching. All the other ones, unfortunately, did not show, which I understand. But I want to show this person what they can do with limited color. Full color is not always important. You can do marvelous things with limited color. And also, limited color, you're not juggling all these colors around and trying to make sure you use all of them. I have seen where students have put out every color they have in their box and they only use 4 or 5. Very seldom do I go over 7 colors when I'm painting full color. But this was ultramarine, sap green, and raw sienna, this first one. The second one was olive green, burnt sienna, and cobalt blue. This seems almost a little bit more realistic. It has some grayed down qualities, where this one I didn't gray the colors down a whole lot. And the last one was an interesting combination. It was the, if I can read my writing, it was ultramarine blue, it was brown madder, and yellow medium. So I didn't lay heavily on the yellow medium, but again, you get a different version of each of these things, and you can decide when you're doing roughs for an idea.
Drop it down a little bit.
You can decide what color combinations you want to use by doing something very simple like this, and it takes the guesswork out of it. And as we're always telling our students in fundamentals, going through thumbnails, comprehensives, and then the final, it's not a rubber stamping process. It is a journey to find the right solution, the best solution. And you're changing things. You might change the proportion of the picture plane. You might take one color out, put another color in. You might change the value pattern a little bit and make the right-hand side darker or the foreground darker, whatever the case may be. But very simply, I stated these. This took about an hour to do, 20 minutes a piece, 15 minutes a piece, somewhere in there, just to show the student that the different color combinations that can be created, which I think is very important.
Mary Ellen wants to know what paper you use for those 3.
Oh, this is the indigo paper, 300 pound cold press or rough. I forget how they go. This is something I did on the other side. But this is a very good paper. But you can see here, if you look close, when I took the tape up, if you press it down too hard, it does pull up some of the fibers of the paper. And paper is very important. It has to be 100% cotton. No wood fiber, because you get pilling all the time. This is 100% cotton. Arch is 100% cotton. Fabriano is 100% cotton. But make sure that it is 100% cotton. Very important.
And you said you don't really like watercolor blocks, and why is that?
Watercolor blocks do not have the sizing on and in the paper, maybe in the paper, but not on the paper as individual sheets do have. It's a different process, and it may be because that they had to get it into pad form. I like the individual sheets because I don't wash any of the sizing off. I start painting right away, and it allows your pigment to float longer, and you can also manipulate it much easier. But this is a great paper. The Arches is a great paper. Those are my 2 go-to papers for the most part.
Now, you also tell people that when they're 140 pound versus 300, how you tape it?
Excuse me. Needed some water. The 140 pound, I tape only at the top, and I have 2 tabs of tape on either side in the middle. And what this does is it allows the paper to contract and expand, because 140 pound paper is much thinner, where 300 pound is much thicker, and it doesn't have that contraction going on. So you just tape it at the top and allow it to flex back and forth. And it doesn't take as long to dry, but putting 2 tabs here will stop the paper from doing this to you.
Now, when we were in Shapiro's watercolor class, he had us soak the paper and then staple it and tape it.
We were using mostly 90-pound paper at that point.
Okay.
So 90-pound paper has to, you can tape it at the top, but it's going to really expand and contract a lot. The 90-pound paper we used to put in a water vat for about 12 to 15 minutes, let it expand, put it down on our board, kind of stretch it out with a clean sponge, and then staple it, and then we'd have to leave it dry. So every day we did that to prepare for class the next day, because you don't want to sit there and waste a good hour waiting for it to dry.
I got some questions here. Tom Kubala said, many thanks for your time, clear explanations and experience. I use a very similar palette, so your demo is extremely helpful. And then Paula, she said, I went to 2 of Dale's workshops, one in Minocqua and the other one was in Land O'Lakes, which was at Lola. Mm-hmm. Love them. Now she lives in Onalaska, Wisconsin.
Onalaska?
Yeah, so might need to see if my new art league can have you come teach a class. Oh, that'd be wonderful.
Yep, that will work.
And then that's it so far.
Okay. So, this brush here. We were in Dollar Tree up in Wisconsin in Eagle River. We were looking for different things over the holiday, and I had a workshop at the Minocqua Art League in few days, and I thought, well, this is a foundation makeup brush, and they have them in different sizes. So I decided I'll try and play with this. Can you get that painting over there?
Mm-hmm. And show them what you're doing with it.
And what I'm doing is I could take this and I can subtract and blend with this. I'm always experimenting, trying to find new things that...
This one?
On the easel.
Not like there's many paintings here.
I know, I have a number of paintings here. But I can maneuver with this brush in a very, very soft way. You have to remember, this is a foundation brush. And again, I got weird looks from the cashier when I bought this. My wife was giggling in the background. But I can go in here and I can soften, lighten, depending on how much I want to remove or manipulate. You can see on how soft this becomes. It's kind of an interesting thing that I can go in and manipulate the watercolor. A couple of my students have bought these brushes, but I bought enough for the workshop, or what I thought was enough, but I had more people show up, so they shared. But it was kind of a fun thing to play with, if nothing else. This was a painting. This is, very cheap paper. This is 90-pound paper. I only taped it at the top, as you can see. And I did this scene, and I used the blending brush up in here and here to soften things. I just want to get an idea, and this was about a 40-minute exercise for myself. But it was just kind of fun to do, to see what I could manipulate with this brush. Does it work or doesn't it work? I found it does work for certain things, so I went and purchased, I think, about 8 of these, what they had left, and I gave them out at my workshop in Minocqua. So
now, like Dale said, we bought them at Dollar Tree for $1.
Yeah.
One in our Thursday night studio class here at the house, he, one of his students, Karen, is also a Mary Kay salesperson, and in their catalog they were going for like $15. So, shop around when you can.
Yeah, Dollar Store has them, or Dollar Tree, or Dollar General. Here I'm recommending for everybody to go to the makeup section at the Dollar Store. But if it works, you're a hero. If you don't, you do something else.
Agnes just came on, and hi, Agnes.
Hello. I am going to take this to the hairdryer, and I don't use the hairdryer an awful lot in the studio, but now that the water stopped glistening, I want to get this a little bit drier. So if you'll lend me just 20 seconds. I will be right with you. You're going to hear the noise of the hairdryer.
Agnes thinks this is wonderful.
What I'm going to do now that I have this dry, and you feel it with the back of your hand, never the front because you've got oil on it. And I'm going to remove the mascoid. And I did put it on in a fashion that was exact because trees aren't exact. And I'm going to be doing different things with the trees. I'm not going to allow them to be pure white because they're not. But you can see the trees starting to come out and the background starts to fold in because darks will recede quite a bit. I just have to get all the, it's like a rubber. When I was in college, we couldn't afford liquid mascoid, so we used to use rubber cement with a toothpick, and it was workable. If I'm not answering any of your questions right now, my art director has left the scene shortly. She'll be right back, so please bear with us. So this gets all the mascoid off, and I'm going to go at the back of my hand to feel if there's any more. There's a little bit right here. And you can see on how that maintains the weight of the paper. And this is one of the reasons why I don't use it that often, is that it takes a lot of work to meld these sharp edges in because I don't like my edges too sharp in different areas here. So I'm going to go along with my 1-inch flat brush, and I'm going to paint a little bit of the raw sienna along with the cobalt blue because it has a little bit of a bluish gray tint to it, and I'm going to do that if I put too much on. But I want to tint this just a little bit. And as it goes up towards the top of the composition, I want that a little bit more toned down, but they will stick out quite a bit as it is. And as it comes down towards the base of the tree, I'm going to warm those up with some of the raw sienna, but I could not have got this light by painting all those darks in there. So it's a matter of manipulation of the subject matter just a little bit, but you can see that the trees are still there. I'm going to get this limb a little bit warmer, and I've gotten rid of all the white, so that does take the sharpness down a little bit.
Say hi to Kathy Los Rathburn.
Hello, Kathy. Kathy Los Rathburn. I took her place at the academy when she retired from there in 1979.
Oh, Dale, you can't say that. She wasn't even born yet.
She was 12. So I can tint the paper. I can also tap it back in. Now, I need some more paper towel because I go through a lot in my studio.
Kathy said, hi, you guys.
Hello. So now I'm going to come off with my 1-inch ox hair. They don't actually make this brush anymore. It was by Morel. And I'm going to slowly connect the top of this tree up to here. And you do this repeatedly. I have different things for lifting, but sometimes I just want them soft and not too sharp. And I'm allowing the color of the background to be part of the tree because everything that is light or any white object will reflect all the color around it. It cannot be white. There's no such thing as just straight white, even though I'm leaving for effect the white of the paper here, which goes against some people's grains, but I'm okay with that.
Agnes wanted to know if we do live on Instagram. We haven't tried that yet. Have you? And let us know. And also, Gwendolyn just popped on. And Kathy said that she left the American Academy of Art in 1981 so she could teach at Purdue. And Lori, let's see. Lori said, many thanks to your live demo. Feel like home just watching. Dale and your knowledge are so confidence building. Excuse me. No, I don't have the coronavirus. Gwendolyn says, love the education you provide, even as you paint.
Thank you. I believe Gwendolyn is out in the Carolinas watching at this point. So I'm starting slowly to build this up, and I'm looking at what I need to do to slowly finish this up. And I'm going to take my oil painting brush and pull out a few distinct lights, and I'm being very careful with this. I'll hit the watercolor a little bit, use the paper towel. As I said, I don't want these things to protrude out. Now, having a focal point in your composition makes the composition stronger, no doubt. There's many times where I experiment with no focal point and have points of interest to slow the eye down, to rest, and so forth. So I like working both ways, but you can't have a very strong composition without a good focal point. So I'm finishing off some of these branches that are coming up. I didn't put all the branches in, which I'll show you how to do that as I move through this. A demonstration is a learning tool. It's really not a finished painting. It's a study in the value patterns, the approach that one takes. And the thing I'm always telling students, don't be afraid to make mistakes. That is one of our best learning tools that we have at our grasp, is making mistakes. I have a landfill somewhere on the south side with my name on it, with all the paintings in it that I've ruined. So I'm bringing out some of these trees just a little bit, hints of them. They're in the shadows, but the bottoms of them I'm going to give a little bit more definition to. Now,
Agnes said she went to the American Academy of Art from 79 to 81.
Okay.
Did you have Dale? Did she have you?
I don't remember all names, I'm sorry.
That was another lifetime ago, too.
Yeah. I've been away from the academy for 20 years now, so. Now, what I'm going to do is lay this flat. I'm going to take my spray bottle, and I'm going to just trickle a little bit of water here and there on the painting itself. And I let that sit there just a minute. What I did with the spray thing, so it doesn't mist, I took a needle, put it in the end, wiggled it around so that it spits, if you can see that.
Oh, I was not on
Can you
it.
see that?
Yeah. Spit.
It has to spit. So now that I've spit on here, I'm going to pull out a little bit of that texture.
No,
So
she
it
didn't
ends up
have
with-
you.
She didn't have me.
No, and she said she didn't take watercolor then either. That would have been with Irv Shapiro.
Yeah. So, at this point, I'm going to take some significant darks to put in before I go really too much further.
So what are you doing? What colors?
So, what?
What colors are they?
Oh, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and sap green. And I'm putting in some defining values around the trees here just a little bit. and I want to add a few extra branches in here, so I paint the paint down and I take my fingernail and add to it. And I'm going to have lost and found edges in these trees, so I'm not worried about losing too many trees.
Okay, it's 1:06, just so you know.
All right, we'll be finishing up here soon.
Oh, Kathy said the video stopped there.
The video stopped?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. What happened?
I don't know. It's still going on mine. Oh, it just stopped. No, it's still going.
Could somebody out there tell us if you're still seeing this?
I've got it on my laptop and it's showing up. Ah, sorry. Okay, she said it's back.
Okay, thank you.
Agnes wants to know your favorite brands of paint.
Cors are my number one, which is what I'm using today. That's Qor. You can get it at Cheap Joe's. It's really an excellent paint. A lot of people like Daniel Smith. A lot of people like Journey, which is very good. They're all good watercolors. You want to look for the light fastness. You don't want to use a student grade paint by any means. And I'm seeing a little bit of...
You like Holbein too.
I like Holbein also. It's a very good brand of paint. I'm adding some significant detail to the birch trees at this point. They're young birch trees, so they aren't scarred a lot with these dark patches on them, and I'm not taking the time that I would normally, because we are pressured to move through this. And at this point, since we have limited time, I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm going to add the finer branches. Now, I know one of my students out there, and I won't mention her name, Phyllis. She never likes me doing this. Sorry, Phyllis.
Let's see.
But I'm lightly scratching through the watercolor to the paper.
Deborah Page Jackson said, I know you're not using yellow right now, but what are the best yellows to use? The ones that you recommend on your palette?
Well, I am actually using yellow. I'm using raw sienna, which is a grayed down warm yellow. I like using yellow medium for fall scenes. There's a number of different yellows I've used over the years, but a yellow medium in any name brand is good. I use yellow light when it's a little bit cooler, because yellow light is a cool color. I use a yellow deep occasionally too for fall scenes, but I don't use a whole lot of different yellows. I try to take and cross mix the yellows so that there's different varieties that I can get through using a limited amount of yellows. I'm very much a great proponent of limiting your palette and not over using color, because the more color you use, the more you have to balance that, which becomes too much of a problem. I like to think about the painting moving and flowing with just a few colors and not this extended craziness that some people do get into. You don't need a lot of color.
Now, Agnes said she hasn't tried Cors yet, but you should really try it. In fact, if you go to Dale's blog post, and I'll include this in the show notes, he did a painting last year. He did an autumn scene in what he normally painted with, and when we won this Cors set, then he recreated the painting in Cors, and wow, it was dynamic.
It was a huge difference in the intensities and of the colors. So just adding in a few little things here. I got a few more things to add that I can show you what any watercolors can do.
And also, Agnes said, those darks, wow. And then Becky Kraft said, do you like translation in paint? I don't
know quite what you might be referring to.
And Paula said, it's amazing how those last added darks added depth. And somebody else agreed with her.
Okay.
And Agnes said, I love raw sienna. And Becky Kraft said, she meant granulation.
Oh, yes, I do like it because it adds character to the painting. I'm not against it. Some paints will be very grainy looking when they, especially on rough paper, they'll settle in different ways. And on hot press paper, it will settle in different ways. But I think it adds character to the subject matter. Now, I'm going to do something here a little bit different than
Hold it up a little higher.
I normally do. I got opaque gouache. In other words, white gouache, Winsor Newton.
Up high.
Permanent gouache. I do use this occasionally in opaque form, translucent form, which means taking the paint, adding it with the watercolor, adding a lot of water so it becomes milky or translucent, almost like a stained glass window. And I'm going to add a few different things in on the trees that I'm using it translucently now, so that it still shows the color or what's underneath here. But I just want to show you a couple of different things, and there's nothing wrong with using it. If I'm using white in large quantities with watercolor, which I do occasionally, I'll use white acrylic because it needs to expand and contract with the paper because it continually expands and contracts over its lifetime.
What stuffed toy did you rip apart?
And
I wasn't talking to Dale.
She wasn't talking to me. But you have to take a look if you're going into a juried show. Are you allowed to use white? Illinois Watercolor Society allows it. The TWSA, Transparent Watercolor Society of America, does not allow it. So you have to be very careful. I know somebody down in Nashville that...
In Indiana.
I have to phrase that, okay, because they always think Nashville, Tennessee.
Brown County.
It's in Brown County. I'm in a gallery down there. But he had entered something to a watercolor society that did not allow the use of white. Well, he's a very tight painter. He does some wonderful paintings. And he added white to do his signature because his painting was very dark. He added white to it. And from what I understand, the judge sat there with a magnifying glass examining it and disallowed his painting because he used white on his signature, which I didn't think was right, but
rules are rules.
Rules are rules sometimes, and so forth. And he ended up with, I hate to mention this, but a Barney Fife in the watercolor world.
We have some more questions, Dale.
Yes.
First of all, Paula said that she has a compulsion to buy every brand. Just thought I'd mention that. And then Agnes said, do you intentionally use less staining colors with this subject?
No, I'll use any colors I need to portray the subject matter. What was the first question again? I'm sorry.
Oh, she just said that she has a compulsion to buy every brand.
Oh, over the years, I started off using permanent pigments, which is no longer existent. It's a name brand that Liquitex bought and then stopped using that name brand. Then I went to Winsor Newton, which I still use Winsor Newton. I went to Holbein, which I love Holbein. That's good.
Agnes, I'm sorry, wanted to know if you thought Core was better than Holbein.
I can't say it's better. We all have our preferences when we're artists. I would say they give you a different variety of hues and different intensity of hues that sometimes you don't get with some of the other color manufacturers. And I always think that getting your color is kind of a personal thing. I have a close friend that uses a color that I used in college because I thought it was the only thing that we could use, but I don't use it anymore. If I give you the color, I might give away the person, because he's a very good friend of mine. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the white.
And Wendy said they had a little conversation going back and forth on here about the white gouache, and Wendy said it was rich art white, which is an old American Academy of Art days.
Yes,
Laugh out loud.
and that was a Chinese white. That cracks, falls off, flakes. This is a permanent white, and you're buying with Winsor Newton or any good reputable brand. The gouache is, 80 to 90% pigment, very little filler in it. There's no filler in it whatsoever. So what I'm going to do at this particular point very quickly, I'm not using straight white. It may appear on the camera, but I'm going to add a little bit of snow to this. Just enough. And I added a little bit of, actually, the yellow ochre to it, or the raw sienna to it. The reason why I did that is that the color will come out a little bit more in the lighter areas here. And I'm just going to add a little bit. I never use straight white. There's nothing as straight white. Sometimes I add blue to the color. Sometimes I'll add green to the color. It all really depends on what I want to try to portray. I'm not in the business of painting exactly what's there. I like a little bit of fantasy in my watercolors. I like to be accurate within my watercolors. And what I like to do is take the tape off. And that gives me a comparison of what's white and what's not. So I have a couple other things that I want to portray with the gouache. And I've added the raw sienna in with it, because warm colors will come forward and cool colors recede. So I want these birches to come forward. So I'm going to see what this does. I'm going to lay this down just a little bit. You can see that that warm color really makes this come forward. I'm just laying down the brush, and I'll hit it here and there just to get the sun. Since we have a warm light source being the sun, the light is usually a little bit warmer where the shadows are a little bit cooler. So I'm just spotting it here and there. And I always have people say, well, I thought you can't do that. Well, there's no law against it. Let's put it that way.
When we saw the Sargent show, he used
A
gouache
lot of gouache.
in his watercolors.
And I think we'll leave it at that. I want to thank everybody for watching today and having your comments. I always feel it's important to convey information to students in different ways. And like I said, we're going to
Can you turn that so I can...
continue doing this every Saturday at 12 o'clock. And if you go to my website...
There we go. Here you go.
My wife has given me impromptu sheets. My website is dalepopovich.com. That's my field journal. And you'll get all the information that you'll need, that things that I do. And it's always different than what other people do. So everybody's an individual, which is what I really like. And I also have courses at toweringwinds.com. So you can take those. Those are actually for purchase, but they're inexpensive to a great degree. But those are more than an hour long, and they're more intensive.
And I just want to let you know that you have lots and lots of thank yous. And said they'll be seeing you next week.
Wonderful.
And Linda just wanted to remind you that she's from Elmhurst, your art class there.
Oh, yes.
And Wendy said this was awesome. Wendy's went to the American Academy of Art as well. And she said she's going to rewatch it later on. Lots and lots of thank yous. Penny just came on board. Penny, you know what? This is going to be running we're going to publish it so you can see it again. And we're also going to announce his blog, because it'll be a list of his brushes and his papers and his paints and all those kind of good things. A lot of people saying they'll see you next week.
Okay, and thank you for watching. And next week we'll have a different subject. I'll have a different type of paper we're going to be using. And please come and watch. And stay healthy. Stay away from other people, I guess.
And wash your hands.
And wash your hands a lot. Haven't heard so much since lived in my house when I was a little kid. Not washing behind my ears, Mom, yet. But okay, have a good day. Thank you again. Bye-bye.